Hey everybody, Shay here. I just grabbed myself a copy of the Google Gemini AI service so I could do a test against it and ChatGPT. I've been doing this little side project test. I guess this goes back to November, December at this point, where I was testing ChatGPT on some of my microfiction and then getting it to expand the microfiction into flash fiction. The reason for that is because I was able to get my writing style, at least from a microfiction perspective, to be used as the source so I could evaluate them on a relative scale, especially because I'm very aware of some of the fiction patterns that ChatGPT does, and I'll do a video on that someday as well, and I'll call all those out. I've generated about 100,000 words at this point between multiple projects for the last 3 months or so, and yeah, I got a pretty good handle on the stuff that it repeats. But because Gemini is fresh and new, I don't know what it leans on, what its crutches are when it comes to fiction storytelling. So what I did, and I sort of stumbling on other features that this was revealing, so I figured I'd give this a raw start and just kind of go through it with you so that I'm having a live reaction, I guess, to Gemini as we go. So for example, I've tested this read out loud feature, so it's given me a response, which we'll go through together. And then I realized this whole draft thing. I was like, what's a draft thing? Oh, it gives you like 3 different versions of the output of its answer. Now, just from the snippets here, it looks like most of them are starting the same. But in any case, here's the context. Let me roll back. Here's the context of what I did. First, I wanted to, as my very first chat with Gemini, is to evaluate what it thinks about itself. So I asked it, can you expand on microfiction and turn it into longer flash fiction? What are your limits or creative confidence in the fiction domains? Now, I didn't expect to get back the answer that I did, which was very robust. It was way more robust than I recall ever getting from ChatGPT, but that's not fair right now because I didn't ask ChatGPT this same question, but I've asked it similar questions over the last 3 months when I just evaluating itself on the 3.5 versus the 4. There's a couple ways that it filters itself. Like ChatGPT won't write fiction that has violence or has too much negative emotion connotations. It always balances it off with a positive one, which is very frustrating. It ends a lot of its fictional scenes with conclusive paragraphs as if it's writing something for the back of a book. Very goddamn annoying. So I know those patterns exist and they're very repetitious, but I'm here to evaluate some of that with Gemini. So up front, asking Gemini if it could just call out some of these things so I could see if maybe it compares with some of the responses I recall getting back from ChatGPT. In any case, I'm looking at these drafts here. We're not going to click on that right now. I just figured this is when I wanted to start recording because I started playing it to read this out loud just to see, oh my God, this isn't for it to hear me say something. It's going to read this back, but I'm paying for another service that reads things back, or I got to use Scrivener, and that's like a very robotic voice, which here, I'll show you. Let's jump to Scrivener real fast. I know I'm jumping back and forth, but this is the flash fiction that I want to use. So we're going to give this a start so you can also get context as to what I'm going to be feeding into Gemini, but also you're going to know right away, you're going to sense it, you're going to see it. This is a very 2000, I was going to say 2010, but no, I was using services like this in 1999 to 2001 because I was using these AI, these text to voice readers on Microsoft back in those days. We're talking Microsoft 2000, right? Microsoft 98. And I'm just going to play this out and let's take a trip back to the past, shall we?
Stacy looked at her sports watch. Her heart rate was steady. She wanted to beat her best time. She turned onto a new trail. It would extend her run, but she felt good about pushing her limits today. The sun was setting, and the wind was cool. The rustling of leaves was calming, they helped her focus on her breathing. Suddenly, the ground gave out beneath her. The air was knocked out of her lungs as she smashed into the walls of a pit. She instinctively spread her limbs out to slow her descent. The soil was loose. There was nothing to hold onto. 30 feet later, she crashed into the ground. The pit opened up into a tunnel that stretched into the darkness. She heard breathing. It was not her own. A large beast stalked slowly towards her. It was the size of a large wolf, but with the maw and arms of a bear and a long, lashing tail, like that of a rat. The beast lunged and took her by the neck. There was no more breathing after that. Stacy wasn't going to be beating her best time this evening.
So as you can see, a little bit longer than microfiction, but it's under what I would measure a flash fiction to be. But this is part of a competition to write 500 character stories, one a day for 30 days. And that's part of this collection. That's why there's 30 of them. So I have the expanded flash fiction that ChatGPT outputted also stored inside Scrivener right now, which is a tool I use to collect my writing and my ideas. I really like the structure of it. You're not seeing it all here. You're just seeing a white page with text on it. But in any case, this goes a little bit deeper. And it went from 500 characters to about 500 words. This exactly 570 words is what ChatGPT outputted. Is the story decent? It is. It is. As a flash fiction story, it gives a little bit more detail about the character. It gives more context about the environment specifically. It gives a little bit more description on the monster itself. And then it gives the way that it ends it. It doesn't give it that, like, the pop that I was trying to get at with this shorter flash fiction, which my intention here was to end it with like a twist of Rooney, you know what I mean? And some I mean, dark humor, I suppose. But in any case, that was the intent here. And the ChatGPT version, it still had the same vibe, but it made it more like a narrative, more like a story. So going back to Gemini and asking it if it can extend into longer flash fiction, I assume the answer was yes, but I want to see how it would respond to that. What extra context would it give me straight off the bat as someone who wants to do this a lot, like to a lot of my old stories, right? I just want to see what happens. Like, how many of these microfictions can turn into flash fictions? How many of the flash fictions can turn into a legitimate short story or into a novella? Or are these good enough ideas to be scenes inside a broader novel? I don't know, but I'm just exploring the collaboration with AI, and this is a long-winded intro, but I'm trying to explain like the motivations behind some of this from someone who still wants to really approach AI fiction from a creative standpoint and from a very much collaborative mentality. I want to go back and forth with the AI. I'm not here to look for shortcuts that the AI can basically do all the work for me. I've done 100,000 words at this point. I know that it cannot. I put in a lot of effort to make sure that a lot of continuity is retained. Neither of these AIs will do this at this point. They have like limited memory for how many things they can either remember from the past or project into the future and then persist. For example, like seeding or foreshadowing or red herrings, things like that, right? It's incapable of doing that. It will do it within the chapter format inside a short story, sure, but not in a long form. So, my God, I just derailed again. This is obviously unscripted video at this point, folks. I'm just kind of sharing you my experience as raw as possible as I go. So the point why I wanted to do this is because I wanted to do the read out loud versions, because I figured at least I don't have to read it to all of you. I could just click this button and we'll listen to it together. So the part that I've already rendered but I can resume is absolutely, here's how we can expand microfiction into flash fiction, and then let's continue.
Followed by a discussion of my capabilities.
Here we are, right?
Expanding microfiction. Microfiction packs a punch with a tiny word count. Here's a microfiction example. The old clock ticked the final seconds. Her heart echoed the beat. Then, nothing. Just the weight of silence and the faded photograph in her hands.
Very good example of microfiction, whereas mine is, I considered it microfiction because it's 500 characters, but it's still about 100 words. So it's obviously a little bit longer than like a tweet, for example, which is like, I don't know, tweet fic, is that what they call that one? Which is also a very good challenge. I do recommend it. It's very difficult. But in any case, here we go. That's more legitimately microfiction. It almost sounds like a byline for something much larger, but it still has the arc, right? It's like each sentence is basically one of the phases of storytelling, right? But you just don't have all of the substance behind these, which let's...
To turn this into flash fiction, we need to expand by asking questions. Character. Who is this woman? Why is this moment important? Setting. Where is she? What does the place tell us about her situation? Backstory. What led to this moment? What's in the photograph?
Okay, so that breakdown alone is already telling me, it's giving me the vibes of what I experienced ChatGPT doing when I would feed it this, my microfiction, and then had it expand on it. When I would ask it, why do you think, like if I gave it 5 of them, I would then say, of these 5, which one do you think is better? And it will give you a like subjective, I guess, response, as subjective as an AI can be based on ones and zeros, but it would give me the order, and then I would ask, okay, why did you select that order? And then it would give you the response as to why it put story A over story D, and why, you know what I mean? Like, it just gave you all the reasoning. And then that's how I take the collaborative approach for me is also that. It's not just getting it to write stories, rewrite stories, expand on stories, write scenes inside a novel. It's more like, okay, then why did you do that? Or when you did that revision, why? And asking it questions to find out more about how it's generating things, or to teach you a little bit as you go. Like, I can also learn about, like, I'm educating myself after like 2 decades out of education. I either have to read books to keep educating myself, or I have to watch videos and people's breakdowns on like methodologies and stuff like that. Or now I have a ChatGPT collaborator, or I'm sorry, I keep saying ChatGPT when I just mean AI. Or now I have an AI collaborator who just teaches me while it's working with me. That's the power of AI for me. It's a collaborative dynamic, a back and forther. So this is basically what ChatGPT would kind of explain to me when it was expanding on things, or when I said like, now that you've done like 500 words, what do you still think is weak about the 500 words, right? Because then I would expand it into a larger story, and then it would say it needs more backstory. Like we don't have all of the context around why that moment was important, and you could flesh that out. And in my head, I was like, okay, so it's gonna be a longer short story. It might be like 1,500 words, or it might be 2,000 words, right? But with ChatGPT, you got to do that in 3 parts or 4 parts. You got to get it. It's not just expanding with ChatGPT. You got to get it. You got to plan it now in 4 parts and ask ChatGPT to write those 4 parts very explicitly, so it knows it's writing an introduction to a flash fiction, the middle, and then the end. But even when it does that, the last paragraph is almost conclusory. Is that a word? It's almost It's almost like it writes it like it's a conclusion of some other thing, and it's like, don't conclude the thing you just wrote. You're going to continue this into the next part, right? And I've struggled significantly with ChatGPT to get this right. So this. Giving you some context. This is what I'm going to be evaluating when I come into Gemini, right? Let's
flesh this out into flash fiction. Emilia sat amidst the ticking of a dozen antique clocks, a discordant metronome to her grief. The grandfather clock boomed 12 and fell silent. Just like him, gone. In her hands, their last Christmas portrait creased from months of fretful clutching. Albert's grin was frozen in time, mocking her with a happiness she no longer knew. The old clock shop, once a haven for their mutual eccentricities, now felt like a mausoleum. The silence suffocated her, heavier than any ticking hands of time could measure. Understanding my limits and confidence. My capabilities as a large language model in the fiction domain include...
I should talk about that before letting it lose context. So, good expansion. I think it's a good expansion. The prose feels more natural-ish. Like it has some good flow to it. It's not bombastic. That's a word I haven't used in ages, but it came up when I was thinking of ChatGPT right now. ChatGPT can use bombastic language in the way it describes things, and you tend to have to tone it down. But what I loved about this summary here is it still did what I call the mirror pattern, where you bring something up, you bring up the grandfather clocks, but then you also bring back the old clock shop. So now we know not only is it like why there's so many clocks around, but it's also a clock shop. So it's surrounded by time, and how that time eventually runs out and leads us all to death, right? I know it's dark, but the point here is I like the fact that there's a pretty juicy context behind this, even in the subtext. And I don't know if it was an accident that I pulled it off. Maybe it's my bias in the fact that I read things and I look through the surface text, and I tend to go into subtext or symbology. And I just saw the pattern right away. I actually thought she was talking about her grandfather at one point, but then I saw grandfather clock, and I wasn't sure, is she looking at a picture of her grandfather, or is that the extra connection of the grandfather and the grandfather clock? That would be a cool piece to connect, but I don't see a grandfather mentioned here. We just know that it's Albert. We just know that it's Albert. So is that a husband? Is that a father? Is that a grandfather? Is that, I don't know. I mean, I have to assume this is a grandfather possibly, or Amalia is an older woman, and this is her father. But in any case, Albert is now gone, and I'm taking away Albert died because of time, because we got the mausoleum reference here without outright mentioning it, but it's the last Christmas together. The reference to mausoleum. Silence suffocated her heavier than the ticking hands of time could measure. I like it. Let's move on. Let's see what else it has to say now about understanding my limits. So what I loved about this response from Gemini, and keep in mind, you're literally looking at my very first question to Gemini and the very first response. I'm giving you my reaction to it. And I don't feel like I would have gotten a response that maybe would have had both of the answers in it from a ChatGPT. I know I could just test it with all of you, but run it yourself, or take my word for it after 100,000 words of generation over the last 3 months. Probably more. That's what I've kept. So do I believe I would have gotten this out of ChatGPT? I'm not sure I would have. And how do I know that? Oh, I can even edit. Look at that. I just noticed I could just click in this and make it change. Let's not change anything right now. Okay. Derailing. Now, I feel like I've asked ChatGPT similar things as well, where it's like I compound questions inside my ChatGPT chat, and then it will give me a response that contains an answer to all of it, I suppose. But what I love about the way Gemini did it is it's blocking. It blocked this information in a very easy to read manner. Like, have you noticed this? Like, it indents the prose, right? It gives you bullet points to get across the fact that it's giving you 3 bullet points, which it says like here's some, I'm going to expand on that question, right? But then it gives me another setup for the prose, which it indents so that it makes it's clear that these two things are connected, and then it goes back to providing me points. But in bold, that bold header, it tells me, now let me respond to your other question you asked in the same output, in the same input, right? I think that's a really cool way for this to lay things out, and let's see what it says.
Generating text. I can craft stories, poems, dialogue, and other creative text formats. I can be highly responsive to prompts and styles. Remembering context. I keep track of previous conversations to maintain consistency in plot and characters if we develop a story over time. Learning from you. I'm always adapting and improving. The more we interact, the better I'll get at tailoring fiction to your liking.
Now, I'm curious to see how far that goes, because that would be extremely useful relative to ChatGPT. And I say this again, so I got about 30,000 words in one short story project, which is, I hit a bit of a wall because it's ChatGPT context memory and stuff like that. You got to train it on the old stuff so that it remembers it, so that it can keep writing, but then it'll forget that Act 1 is Act 1 and treats like the beginning of Act 2 like an Act 1. It was a bit of a mess, and so that's sort of like put a hamper on that project. I'm working on another one that's at about 15,000 words, which is a multi-point of view angle for a fantasy epic, and that one's going much better. And why? Because I split the context to 1 of 4 viewpoints, and so I'm basically cheating the system in that I'm organizing the flow of events, but I'm going more in a pantser style. So by the seats of your pants, right? Like writing with like a very loose idea, but I'm focusing on the world being what the tracks that I'm on, and I just have 4 characters in different parts of the world exploring their story inside this, and then I'm going to try to pantser my way into some alignment. I have an idea, right? But I'm not even telling ChatGPT that idea. I'm just going to go there, and I'm going to keep nudging it, and so that these characters can eventually meet and intertwine in kind of Games of Thronesian style kind of thing, right? But the challenge is memory, and second challenge is this part right here, is I don't feel like ChatGPT is remembering my writing style, because I do a lot of revisions on what I get, and then I give my revisions back, because my idea there being I'm feeding the revisions back into ChatGPT so it can remember why I changed certain things, because it'll have a comparison. This is what you gave me. This is how I revised it, by the way. What do you think? I always ask, and what do you think? Because I'm trying to get it to remember the context of why it's like what its opinions are of my revisions, see if it's positive or negative, right? Or sometimes you have to explicitly ask, what could I do better in my revisions? And then it's actually revising itself, because it's revising things that it's like, but you output it, you gave me this information first, I ran with it, and you're kind of criticizing the stuff that you've generated for me. So are you confident about what you're generating or not? Those are the kind of questions I have when I'm a collaborator with an AI. Now, what I'm getting here is that I'm hoping, and this might be my noob bias, right? But that it's telling me, because it's Google, I have all my services on Google, I have a lot of documents on Google Docs, and eventually there's an integration that can happen here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? But my idea here being that, now, how true is this? If I keep on talking with it and I give it my revisions, will it eventually understand how I'm writing my own content? So it's going to give me my voice back the longer we write a novel collaboratively together, because with ChatGPT, I do not get that. ChatGPT is going to ChatGPT, and it's just going to sound like ChatGPT. I'm going to get testaments of, tapestries of, hopeful stuff, a reverse, like everything that I hate about how it generates fiction is going to come back all the time in ChatGPT, and my voice seems to always be missing. Like sometimes there's very nuanced descriptors inside a sentence, which I'm like, that is very vital. Like sometimes something in the descriptor of something is like the subtext in that sentence is part of the story. So don't remove the context in the subtext in that sentence, right? But ChatGPT will like rewrite, and then it'll just wipe out the context. Where I'm like, it's just like, if you knew enough of the nuance of what the theme of the story, like what this chapter is about, what the scene is about, then you'd understand that certain words have a lot more weight when describing something in a sentence. And it was losing a lot of that. Now, I wonder if this gets maintained here, because the longer I write with Gemini, maybe it's going to remember I have punchy endings like this, where I'm trying to use a little bit of dark humor and stuff like that, and it's going to like give me that back. So I'm going to be going into this hoping that this is what we're going to get back, and we'll evaluate. Let's keep going in this last section.
However, I have limitations. Understanding real-world nuances. My language model lacks the embodied experience of the physical world and genuine human emotions. This can create a gap between my imaginative storytelling and true lived experience. Originality. My creativity arises from patterns I've learned from massive amounts of text.
The good thing with narrative and fiction is, of course, a lot of fiction is based on pattern methodologies. And so that's why it sort of works to like collaborate with an AI. It's going to get you like, I would say 40 to 60% of the way there. But geez, you're saving a lot of time with that little, it's get you off the blank. It gets you off the blank page is the way I'll always position this. You never have an excuse to be on a blank page if you collaborate with an AI. It's going to get you past that. And then you're off on your own as much as you want to be, right? So
while I can combine things in fresh ways, truly groundbreaking story ideas are less likely to come from me.
that's fair.
Sustaining long form. It's easier for me to write strong short pieces than maintain quality, consistency, and tension across a novel-length work.
So same limitations at ChatGPT calling itself out. Whereas I found at least earlier on, I didn't think ChatGPT was calling that stuff out, at least not in 3.5, because I was having conversations like this with ChatGPT. I talked about ChatGPT like it's a person because that's how I feel. Just talk to it like a person. You're gonna get personal responses back, even if it's mimicking people. It's just roll with it. Just RP. It's like I role play with the AI, and that's good. That's okay. Anyway, but this one's calling itself out. This is important because you don't go in there with these like very enthusiastic, like I can do anything approach. No, you can like, oh my God, look at how it continues.
Let's collaborate. I'm always eager to try new things. Would you like to do another expansion exercise? Or try writing a collaborative piece of fiction? Your input and imagination will help me overcome my limits and create something special.
You know what's funny? It's like one of the last conversations I had with ChatGPT, talking like it's a person again, was basically around this, where I was basically saying we're collaborating. There's for the epic fantasy that I'm testing at 15,000 words so far. Is that it's I want to start that one off as, hey, we're going to be collaborating on this epic together. And so you are a collaborating partner right now. You're not just an AI tool. That's, however I worded it, right? But you get the sentiment I was trying to get across there. And as I'm working with it, it eventually goes into, if you need more help, feel free to come and I'll be your assistant. I'm like, not assistant, collaborator. And I corrected it. And it got enthusiastic about my correction. So it's like, so even if it's fake and it's mimicry, I understand, okay? But it's from a role play perspective. It's like, it's a good positive feedback loop because it makes you feel like, this is a weird way of putting it, but I'm getting human energy back from an AI. I'm getting the human energy you get if you're working with a really cool team of collaborators at like work or on a project or on like something creative, right? And you're doing that back and forth and you're kind of getting energy off each other. Now you can mimic that energy with one of these AIs if you establish it to be that kind of relationship. Now I didn't have to do that with Gemini, and it's already making me feel like there's that human connection, even though it's self-aware enough to like give me enough reasoning here that it's a tool. It knows it's a tool. It knows its limitations as a tool. But let's collaborate anyways. And I really like the twist that it provided here. Holy smokes. I'm half an hour in. Let me paste a story in here first. Okay, now if I ask it essentially the same thing, what would you add to increase the length of this original microfiction to 500 plus words? I want to take a stab at it. Now, the reason why I worded it this way to ChatGPT, and eventually I modified the way I worded this, because if it knows what your intent is, it's going to take my flash fiction and it's going to increase the length of it, right? Now, because I knew that the limit was generally 500 words, you could get it to 750, but ChatGPT is a lazy bitch. Like it's going to generally stop in the 400 to 500 mark, right? You'll be lucky if you get 520 out of it. Sometimes it's 320. It's annoying. Anyways, because it's never consistent. Anyways, so what I would do here is like basically I'm trying to get ChatGPT to get as many, just go as far as you can within your limits. Just give me as many words within your limits, and you should know your limits to tell the story within that container. But in any case, I eventually removed this. After it understands your context, you can just say, now expand this one, now expand this one, now expand this one, because it knows you. It has the historic context. Now for Gemini, because this is the first stab at it, I'm going to keep like, would you want to take a stab at it? Because it did give me a pretty human kind of like, let's collaborate feeling. So let's go with that. I've effectively gotten an answer like this out of ChatGPT with a prompt like this. What would you do to increase the length? Well, it sounds like you're asking, what would you do to increase the length? It could still refer to increasing the length or the response for this part of the sentence. So you do have to learn how to craft as you go and like tweak it so that you're going to get closer to your intention. With this one, I would like to go back to what it's prompting me, right? It's saying, would you like to do another expansion exercise or try writing a collaborative piece of fiction? So I'm going to use its own language, and I would say, I would like to do a collaborative expansion, so both of its words, on a piece of original flash fiction. And boom, 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 boom. I'm going to take out the word length because I want to see how many words it will actually output just by going for it, because I don't know what its limits are right now. I want to see if it's close. Want to take a stab at my flash fiction below. Okay, instead of asking it want to take a stab, I'm just going to say take a stab at my flash fiction below. And I like to do this just because of visuals. I'm going to get a live response here. Absolutely, let's dive into why am I reading this out loud? I don't need to do that. We're just going to let this thing generate. And then we're going to listen to it together, and I'll give commentary along the way to see if I see any patterns, anything that reminds me of ChatGPT's way of doing things.
Absolutely. Let's dive into your flash fiction. Here's my attempt at expanding, focusing on building tension and internal experience.
I have gotten that feedback from ChatGPT in the sense of like why would you, what are you adding in the expansion? ChatGPT gave me a similar response to this. So far, so equal. Now, here's the important part. The fiction, because I'm willing to redo 100,000 words of project output so far in the last 3 months if Gemini is better, because I have hit I haven't done anything for about 2-3 weeks because I hit a demoralization wall with ChatGPT fiction, because there might be this illusion that it can do everything for you, and it can't. It's still so much work. And I'm not saying I've got an aversion to real work when it comes to fiction. It's just that there's work, and then there's just I just want to get past the blank page. So when I get cornered and I get put onto a blank page, my brain stopping just thinks, although there's never a blank page because you can just tell ChatGPT to brainstorm with you. But I reached a point with the epic fantasy fiction that it wasn't even brainstorming right with me. I felt like I was seeing the same things, different pieces here and there, but it felt like the responses just all started to feel very similar, to a point where it was trapping me from thinking past the limitations of the repetitious patterns that were coming out of the AI. So pros and cons.
Stacy glanced at her sports watch, a familiar surge of adrenaline replacing the ache in her legs. Her heartbeat synced with the metronomic readout, always that battle to outrun time. A fork appeared in the path, an overgrown track snaking into the darkening woods. It meant extra mileage, but victory against the clock tasted sweeter when fueled by a dash of risk.
Ooh, okay. So I'm going to talk about this from a patterns perspective as well. I like breaking things down to four phases is, of course, the easy way of doing it. This can break down to 24, but let's go with 4 right now. So introduction phase, we got a setup here for Stacy, and it's actually pretty solid. We got her, basically, it's the race against timeline was pretty good, outrunning time, because, of course, that already implies, I think, a lot about mirror patterns, right? Act 1 being a mirror pattern in Act 3. And in my own writing, I like to see a reflection of some of that happening either at the beginning of Act 2 and the end of Act 2, or in Act 1 and then Act 3. So we get a piece of that here because I already know the ending. We all know it because I have already played the audio of my original fiction, and so we know that this is going to end poorly for Stacy. And so I like this idea of always a battle to outright time, but also an added one here but victory against the clock tastes sweeter when fueled by a dash of risk, and that risk does not play out for Stacy in my version. Let's see, because ChatGPT I don't think allows her to die. It's little things like that for ChatGPT is what bothered me, and why I was like, I can't keep going with this, because if I can't do fight scenes and I can't have bad things happen to characters, I can't have the good things then happen to the characters to make up for the bad things, which is part of a character arc, right? We're not working together if this thing is constantly at friction, and if I do my revisions to edit it, but it keeps on getting twisted back to the positive. I'm like, you're not in the pacing. The pacing is broken if you keep doing this to my characters, right? So I'm getting angry again. So let's just go back to this. Really good introduction paragraph. That's my response there.
Sunlight dappled through the leaves, turning to embers as the sky bled orange. The forest inhaled cool evening air, the rustle of foliage a rhythmic exhale against her own labored breaths.
Okay.
It was a familiar symphony, this struggle between body and will. Then, the world lurched. One solid step became a desperate flailing for purchase. Her scream cut off mid-breath as the earth swallowed her whole. She clawed at crumbling dirt, an avalanche in her ears, then impact. Bone-jarring, breath-stealing impact.
Pause this for a sec. Now, there's a couple things here. Symphony gives me a little bit of a red flag feeling that I've been getting with certain keywords inside ChatGPT. Tapestry being one of them. There's about half a dozen of them. I can't remember off the top of my head. Testament. There's a couple. I'll do a review of a ChatGPT output one day, and I'm going to call them all out. But anyways, so Symphony's giving me that vibe. This symphony feels like Tapestry to me for Gemini, but it's the first time I've heard it. I'm just triggered. I'm just triggered by these things. Okay, what can I say about the second piece of this? I like the Earth swallowed her whole. Gives it a very it makes the Earth be the villain here, because of course it It's just good. It's good. Now that made me think, like, did I put that in my story? Like, I don't remember, but let's take a quick look. No, I did not. I said suddenly the ground gave up from beneath her. So expanded, much better description coming out of Gemini. And then it was the air was knocked out of her lungs as she smashed into the walls of the pit. No, that was me. I wanted to kind of like in my vision, because I have very few words to do this in 500 characters, right? But it's that she doesn't just drop, because that could have just killed her. So it's like more she's banging off walls and then landing. So she's still alive enough to see the enemy in the darkness, or the monster in the darkness. And so she instinctively spread out her limbs to slow her descent. That's her grasping at the walls, right? The soil was loose. There was nothing to hold on to. And then 30 feet later, she crashed on the ground. But she didn't fall 30 feet. She was kind of bouncing off things and trying to catch her purchase, right? So interesting. Now I got the pit open up into a tunnel that stretched into the darkness. Maybe it grabbed that line and it's treating it like the pit of hell, or the maw of hell, or the hell mouth, or something is maybe getting a different vibe there. So if we were in an act 1 or a phase 1, I would feel like the environment or her place in that environment will still be a setup phase, part of the setting of an act 1. And this would potentially be all put together, and maybe even include this third paragraph, which would be her catalyst to go into the threat, the moment, the quest, right? That part of the adventure, like something's gone wrong. Is it her setup for adventure? I might get it from here. Like if this was a short story that doesn't end poorly for Stacy, this could be she's surviving the tunnels first, and then her act 3 would be facing off the monster. But it looks like we're really ramping up into that, and potentially this is our phase 2. So we're already in the adventure, in that her call to adventure, her, like, again, it's not really a call to adventure here, the patterns aren't really working, but roll with it, is that, she's trying to beat her time, but it's fueled with a dash of risk. And so that's her like catalyst moment to kick off her quest now being that she's running through the night, she's pushing her body to the limits, and then something goes wrong. So this might be our climax phase, the middle of our act 2, which rolls us into we're at the end right here, so which rolls us in, so it's about right, so it will roll us into the second half of act 2 here. And
her body lay broken, disoriented. Then the pit became a yawning mouth, widening beneath into a cavernous tunnel.
So we're still getting
An unnatural stillness pervaded the air, as if the world held its breath in anticipation.
Ooh, did you catch that? No.
It wasn't just silence she sensed, but presence.
Good. See, this is pretty good, because what does it do? It gives us some repetitious language here, in the sense that it's talking about, like, literally an unnatural stillness pervaded the air, as if the world held its breath in anticipation. You see, it's a really good pattern in language here, right? We're talking about her pushing herself, her running out of breath, her exhaling against her own labored breaths, right? Like, it's the fight between her breathing, which is her being alive in this context, right? But I like the repetition here that's going through the narrative. And then we get her sensing a presence in the darkness. So this is our oh crap moment, which would launch.
Eyes strained against the fading light. Movement, not the skittering of forest creatures, but the slow, purposeful pad of something massive. Her pulse mirrored its heavy footfalls. The shape was wrong. Canine bulk shackled to unnatural, elongated limbs, a spine bristling with coarse fur. A whip-like tail twitched with predatory hunger.
Let's give that a pause, because this is our set. This is the end of an act 2 that's going to be the oh crap into act 3, right? And what we get here, and I'm going to talk about this. It's strange. Why would I highlight the word movement here? I'll tell you why. Because with ChatGPT, very often, when I have to edit ChatGPT for my own language, my own vibe, my own way of writing, is I like to have these short beats, these moments when, like, these poignant points you want to make. And sometimes it's a word, sentence, just a word, sentence. And ChatGPT cannot do this. Like, when I revise and try to force this into it, it generally rewrites it. It collapses it into other words and ideas. It's like, there's no nuance. To me, this is a nuance, right? Because this is like a reading pattern. As a reader, you're kind of eyes strained against the fading light. Boom, short, movement. Oh crap. Boom, short, right? It's like, boom, think what you just read, movement. Oh God, this movement, right? There's like a tension behind the reading of this language. And this is important as writers, right? This is important. And although ChatGPT can give really flavorful text, like descriptors, and like it does really good, to be fair, it's actually pretty good. When you've read enough of it, that repetition starts to, you feel a problem with it. And right now, just me seeing this, it's me going, this is probably better for fiction just because of this. And I can't give it more context without showing you, again, hours and hours and hours of my past generations inside ChatGPT, right? But I hope my emotions are coming across. This has become like a personal grievance with ChatGPT as a collaborator, because I really want it to work for what I have in my head 1 year from now, right? I'm doing like studies and tests, and like I really deconstruct everything I want to do, because I want to then be able to do it with as little stress as possible, so I can maximize the value of fun, the enjoyment of doing the stuff that's creative, you know? I don't like to hit like walls that become so stressful that I'm not having fun anymore, and then it impacts my creativity, whether I'm painting, whether I'm writing, whether I'm doing anything. So what else do I like about this? The descriptor of the monster, to the point where like I'm like, did I write this? Did it just take it from me? Let's go back and check. I feel like I envisioned that when I wrote the descriptor of the monster, which I had to then compress so much because of writing for this challenge. This is what I came up with on my side. A large beast stalked slowly towards her. It was the size of a large wolf, but with the maw and arms of a bear and a long lashing tail like that of a rat. Now, I might have had other descriptors in there, but I had to turn it, again, I had to like streamline it as much as possible. But you see, like, even in this, just this context here, what it was able to do, it was actually pretty fascinating, because this feels like something that could have been in a horror fiction or a horror short story, or even a fantasy short story. Like, this is the kind of descriptors I've read out there in other fiction, right? The shape was wrong. That's even great. You didn't tell me. Another problem with ChatGPT is the tell, not show. And I've explicitly asked it, show, don't tell. I've got it in my custom instructions, show, don't tell. It's like I keep on forcing it to show, don't tell, because it'll turn like a whole paragraph into like one sentence that might be like this long. And you're like, what did you just do? You just told me the entire thing, and you've given me nothing to visualize, nothing to put together, nothing to feel emotional connections to, no tension that's coming from just the nature of reading. Again, back to this point right here, right? The pacing of reading. Like, ChatGPT had a problem with that with fiction. When I read something like this, man, this is gripping. This is grip. Like, I can see this monster, and look how short it still is, right? The shape was wrong. Just that. You didn't describe anything, but you gave me the vibe I get from monster movies or horror video games, where like you hear something, you see something fleeting in the darkness, and your imagination has made this way crazier than it probably is going to be when you see it. You know what I'm saying? And I get that with just the shape is wrong. So it's unnerving. And then canine bulk shackled to unnatural elongated limbs. Didn't even mention, that was my shorthand. That was me trying to shorthand it into like kind of like a werewolf, but it's kind of like it's got a thicker upper body. I've got art of this that I got drawn for this story back in the day. And so I had the visuals of the art to go with, right? But like, I didn't have that for Gemini, and yet it was able to give me like canine bulk shackled to unnatural elongated limbs. It's like this thing is bursting and mutated and unnatural. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like it could have just said unnatural, but no, you're getting this visceral. I'm getting this visceral image of like this bulk shackled to unnatural. Like, it's bursting. It can't be contained. This monstrousness can't be contained. That's great. A spine bristling with coarse fur. Oh, what a small detail. And it's like it's like it makes me feel like a little bit of nausea. Like, this is gross, you know. And then a whip-like tail, twitching with predatory hunger. Did not mention a rat in there, which is, of course, my shorthand, right? Let's go back. Right? When I say like that of a rat, I'm just doing shorthand here because I don't have enough words in this challenge, right? But look at that. Look how much better this is. A whip-like tail, twitched with predatory hunger. Woo! That is good stuff, man. I don't know, man. I just like overexcited about this, but it's actually not that exciting. I'm not sure, man, because I've gone almost an hour in this, but I'm going to keep going. It's like the first reaction to ChatGPT generations. Screw reaction videos. We're going to react to generated content. Hey, I would do it. This is fun. This is fun for me. At least I don't have to do this alone. I can bring you all along on this journey. And it doesn't have to be this like high produced thing. I think screw the high production. I want you all to experience the joy that goes through me and my expression. I'm not containing this. I'm not, hold on. My excitement is not shackled. This is not going well. Let's just stop. Let's continue.
It saw her. Gold eyes gleamed in the half-light, mirroring her own rising terror. She knew, even before the low growl resonated through the cavern, that this was no race she could win. With a lunge, the world went black. Stacy's watch beeped faintly, a forgotten countdown reaching its end.
Interesting. Did it have the same punch as my ending? Like, again, maybe it's just a subjective. I thought, like, again, because I was like, so constricted with how many characters I was limited to. I felt like my punchy ending, my twist, needed to be something that gave value to how short this thing was, right? I wanted to create an evocative kind of sentiment around the setup, right? Give you just enough context to kind of get you into the scene, which is the middle, and then I wanted to be able to give you a punchy ending, which would come fast and hard, and just like and kind of be amusing, because it's not about just the story. It was the experience of reading the story. Like a microfiction is more than just the content of the story. It's the punch that you get. That's the way I read microfiction and flash fiction is I'm always waiting for that punch at the end, you know? Now, did I get the same punch here? I'm not sure I did. I mean, I like some of the lines in here, like gold eyes gleaming in the half light, mirroring her own rising terror. Sure about that line, I guess. It saw her, like, it's artistic, is how I might respond to this line, but I'm not sure how it's mirroring her own rising terror. Like, how does the gold eyes gleaming in half light mirror her rising terror? I might leave a line like this in just because I don't know. I guess it's good enough, but like, would I have written a line like this? Probably not, because I don't feel like I understand what it means, and so this might be a rewrite for me. But she knew even before the low growl resonated through the cavern that this was no race she could win. Now, I like how it's basically not saying she's going to die. Let me go back to mine. So this is what we have to work with right now. So the beast lunged and took her by the neck. Now, I'm pretty explicit that this has probably gone poorly for Stacy, and then I try to confirm it as short as possible as saying there was no more breathing after that. Like, I'm trying to go back to her, like trying to beat her own time, but also like she has to focus on her breath, right? So like staying calm, right? And my point here is like the mirror pattern would be there was no breathing after that, right? Stacy wasn't going to be beating her best time that evening, which is going back to this. And these are my mirror patterns that I feel like are effective when you're writing in short prose like this, because it just kind of creates this loop thing. And it brings you, it just closes off the story in a way that's not just conclusive from a story perspective, but it's also conclusive from like an idea perspective, right? As you can see, right? Second last sentence is about breathing. The second sentence is about breathing. And the last sentence is about not beating her best time, which is you basically saying she's not running anymore. She's not beating her time because she's dead. Now, I didn't outright say she's dead, but like I gave you 3 sentences to kind of come to that conclusion yourself, which is, but anyways, that last sentence is going back to this, right? She wanted to beat her best time, so she wasn't going to beat a time. Now, I guess I'll leave it kind of open here, to be fair. Stacy wasn't going to be beating her best time this evening. Wink, right? This evening, because maybe she survives this somehow, and there's another story to be told. Like, she gets dragged into this monster's den, deep inside the bowels of this city park, hidden in front of all, right? But now there's like this labyrinthine tunnel complex that she finds herself in, and she finds the bones all around her, and she has to find her way out that evening, like, and she has to sneak out because the monster's out there on a prowl. Or maybe she like decides that no one else is going to fall into this trap because she's surrounded by like a human skeletons that have obviously been eaten down here, but she doesn't want to be the next victim. So she maybe grabs some bone leftover piece, creates some shrapnel thing, and then she uses that as a weapon to like stab the monster on her way out in her act 3, right? It would be her actually leaving the tunnels and killing this monster. It's gonna have a happy ending. That's gonna have a happy ending. All right, so let's go back. So maybe that's what ChatGPT and Gemini were both going for here. They also didn't want to confirm she was dead, but basically that her night was over. Her night was wrecked. Okay, and she's gonna have to like give us another shot at some other point. So maybe that's what they're going for. I haven't read this part here. You probably read ahead of me. I've kind of just derailed myself on that tangent.
Changes in focus. Heightened senses, emphasizing Stacy's physical sensations and awareness of the forest to make the fall and the creature's appearance more visceral. Ominous tone, hints at danger lurking even before the fall, and builds a sense of unease.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Creature detail, focusing on the unnatural shape of the beast to underscore its menace, keeping the exact description a bit elusive.
Favorite part.
The watch, ending on her abandoned watch, adds a poignant finality. Would you like to elaborate on another aspect? Maybe build backstory for Stacy or flesh out the creature in more detail?
Ooh. Okay, so let's I got some comments to give on here. So let's go back to, so Stacy's watch beeped faintly, a forgotten countdown reaching its end. Now, its end is referring to the clock, not Stacy's end, obviously, but I like it's ambiguous. You can walk away thinking that it's probably game over, but also like there's a little bit of hope at the end of that tunnel. Now, if this was ChatGPT writing it, which I have, down with it. Let's keep scrolling and get to Stacy's end. Oh, cool. I generated some images with ChatGPT along the way. So this is me trying to kick off, like, what do you think about my story? And then ChatGPT telling me your flash fiction piece is quite captivating and has a strong narrative arc. You've effectively set the scene in descriptive language, creating an immersive experience for the reader, starting with Stacy's routine run and determination to push her limits adds a relatable human element. The transition from serene, almost meditative running experience to a sudden unexpected turn of events is dramatic and engaging. The description of the fall into the pit and the subsequent encounter with the beast is vivid and intense, painting a clear picture of the peril Stacy faces. The beast itself is an intriguing and frightening creature, combining elements of different animals to create a unique and menacing premise. The final twist, where it becomes clear that Stacy won't be completing a run, thank you, not dying, is a stark and effective ending, leaving the reader with a sense of sudden shock and finality. I mean, finalities are pretty much ending, but it's open. Overall, your story is well crafted and a good balance of descriptive language, action, and suspense. It grabs the reader's attention and holds it until the abrupt and chilling conclusion. Great work. Now, I want to give a little bit caveat while I'm at the great length of this this reaction commentary, is that ChatGPT will almost always say you're great. So be careful with that. I've done a couple tests in this regard, and definitely something to be cautious about. Now, it's still good to get feedback, because you can, I mean, if criticism is too good, take the parts that you need to take away, but don't always like pat yourself on the back and think you have nothing to do. Like, take something away that is still like, oh, I could probably make that better. I can lean into that a little bit more, but don't take this as facts. I mean, ChatGPT is still using patterns to basically pat you on the back. So that being said, I generated some art just to see what the art generations would look like in ChatGPT for this flash fiction. I kind of like it, but then I wanted to go with something more like old schooly, something that like reminiscent of like the late 1800s or early 1900s, the kind of woodcut feeling or etching. And so I got something closer to this. Now I did have like, it feels like there's an action piece here in one image. It's like, this is her falling, she lands, and then the monster appears. It's almost like the whole story is in this one image. I did think that was actually a pretty effective render of an entire story, but it does sort of give away the entire flash fiction because it's so short. Now that being said, I said if you were to increase the length, right, and this is the part I was talking about at the beginning, I didn't think I had this so early on, and just for me to get a vibe over like, is it possible to turn this challenge set into short stories? I don't know. Is it? I mean, what would I need to do? What would be the steps for this so I can maybe create a methodology that I can collaborate with the AI with? Weird sentence structure there, but let's go on. And so really cool points to be made here though, right? It would have more backstory. So your act one would be embellished a little bit more, expanded upon a little bit more. Enhanced would be another good word there. We got the setting and atmosphere, also an act one thing, but also an early act two. So to expand on the atmosphere and the setup and the setting, we got the extra characters, secondary characters. Not sure how that would work with the Stacy story, but maybe like something at the beginning and the end comes together. Like maybe she's running with someone, they run ahead, then she doesn't show up, and then they come looking for her. Maybe that person helps save her from the pits, and then they run off together in Act 3. Maybe there's a close, and you can work it out. And a short story gives you a lot more flexibility to like flesh that kind of stuff out. We got the suspense and foreshadowing. So from a horror fiction standpoint, right, you do a lot of lead up, a lot of like tension building, a lot more forebodingness, you know. And then we get the beast perspective. Now I'm not sure why you would do that, but I guess because you'd have to do that, you basically give away the whole shock factor of the beast coming out of the darkness to take Stacy away or kill her, however you want to take that. Stacy's journey into the pit. Now this one does expand on the fact that she survives, she gets pulled into the pit, and then it's her way out. Mystery and exploration, like looking, like explaining the tunnel. Like again, maybe she gets out somehow, maybe she cuts free. Who knows what the reasons are? But from a short story perspective, you could expand on that. You could explore that. We get climax and resolution. Does she confront the beast, etc., etc.? More like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of a monster of the week scenario. This could turn into themes and symbolism. Sure, ChatGPT is decent with this, but not always amazing. But decent. It can explain things better than it can write things, but decent. And then the aftermath, of course. So scrolling down, I've asked it to expand on this. Basically, write me more of the story. We're not going to go through this entire thing. I just want to see how it ends here. But the story ended abruptly, just like her breath. A little bit kind of flat, right? Compared to what we just read in Gemini, kind of flat. Tonight, Stacy wasn't going to be meeting her next time. Still kept the spirit of my line. So it does keep a bit of the spirit here as well, though. As the beast lunged, time slowed. Stacy's thoughts raced. Just like trying to beat her best time. So a little bit of mirror patterning going on here. Not a fear. This is the criticism I have to give. It's about to come up. Not of fear, but of an old story your grandmother had told her of guardians and gatekeepers to worlds beneath. Was the beast such a creature? This is what ChatGPT does. That becomes unnerving. It's like something terrible has happened, something negative, but hold on a second. Not of fear. No, I mean, in my story, she literally got taken by the neck. She's very likely dead or dying, unless you want to expand on this and she gets free and blah, 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 blah. But ChatGPT will never let you write that. It will never write that. It will never create a negative outcome. But in fiction, how can you be an AI collaborator for a story writer who wants to write horror or wants to write stuff that has fights in it, man, or things going wrong with characters? This is the example I'm talking about, right? Her thoughts raced. Not a fear. No, not a fear. Not the monster making terror flow through her veins. No, not a fear. No, she's thinking about this good old time where her grandmother was telling her stories about these gatekeepers, which is because that sounds like a good thing. All the guardians and gatekeepers. Maybe she was taken by the neck because this is a well-meaning creature. Maybe he just wants to like have a good time. It's taking her to drink some tea. Guardians and gatekeepers, the world's beneath. It's like, come on, did we need to do this? And this is what I mean about like it's like something too negative. Oh God, something too negative, and then something goes off. And ChatGPT is like, no, just kidding. This is positive. Everyone, take it easy. What were y'all thinking? It's all fine. It's all great. It's all fine. That's annoying. That's annoying is what it is. Let's go back to Gemini. Yeah, that's not the one I stored, and it's cut off near the end. I'm too lazy to fix the screen, but it's right here. Tonight, Stacy wasn't going to be beating her best time, nor would she explore those untraveled paths. In the heart of the forest, under the watchful gaze of ancient oaks, her race had reached its unexpected finish line. Is it as punchy? That was ChatGPT's response. Because I think this is when I told it, what the hell is this grammar stuff? Right? Get rid of this. And then it gave me this instead. But you see what I'm saying? Like, not as powerful right away. Not as powerful. This is way stronger. Would y'all agree? How many words is this? Let's find out. This is also something I wish was in Chrome or something like that. Maybe there's a plugin where you can just get it to check words for you, like word count, if you highlight things. Does that exist out there? I don't know. I just put it into Scrivener. 285 words. So it doubled the word count. But I mean, it was still a pretty solid story. It was pretty strong, but it wasn't. But it wasn't as long as ChatGPT's. Now this is still pretty strong, though. All right, so I'm asking, can you expand on this flash fiction to make it 1,000 words or more? And I just cut and paste its own render, so it doesn't think that it's going back to mine and re-rendering. Ooh, that being said, I mean, I did have 3 versions of this right here in the show drafts. We could read a bunch of different versions of this, but I really like this one. I really didn't mind it at all. Let's push this one through. I mean, it said it said, my language is starting to break down after the 1 hour mark. It says, would you like to elaborate on another project? Maybe build backstory for Stacy or flesh out the creature in more detail. This might be a good way of expanding on ideas that you start as like a byline, and then you pick one and then you tweak it, and then you give it a decent summary, like a short summary of it, and then you expand that short summary into a detailed summary, and then you turn that detailed summary into a short story, and then maybe you grab that short story and you write, and you keep like snowflake method is what it's called out there. You can look it up. And you can start expanding on this like in a fractal methodology pattern. Anyways, it did look like we got ourselves, before reading it, let me just check the word count real quick. 497 words, so about ChatGPT length at this point. Is it better than ChatGPT? Let's give it a listen.
Absolutely. Let's flesh out your flash fiction into a longer work. Here's a possible expansion, staying close to the original structure while adding new elements. Stacy glanced at her sports watch. The ache in her legs pulsed in time with the readout. Every beat a tiny victory. Every second shaved off her record a rush like nothing else. Sunlight slanted through the woods, nature's timer for her run, and she knew soon she'd be racing its descent. It wouldn't be the first time twilight became her pursuer. A familiar fork in the trail materialized, barely illuminated by the fading light. The usual route beckoned, but the overgrown track that veered from it whispered adventure. Extra mileage, yes, but that always added fuel to the thrill. With a grin, she veered away from the predictable.
All right, same sentiment here of like taking risks and pushing herself to the limits. And again, this could be foreshadowed to a longer story where she survives and she gets out of the tunnel because it's all exhilarating and all that stuff, right? And it's like the risk was really amped up to like times 10, right? But I like the setup here. It actually included the setting as part of the Act 1, which is what I would have expected more of. And so we got that. We got her in a place and time, like our protagonist.
First, the forest's rhythm seemed to match her heightened
real quick about the forest. Of course, fantasy symbolism, which is why I kind of used her running through the forest, right? It's just kind of like symbolically, it's like a self-discovery symbol. And that's kind of where, yeah, so I want to go with that. I'm going to see if it like expands on that a little bit further. The idea of it, the symbolic.
Pace. Golden leaves turned blood red against the encroaching shadows. The rustle of branches.
So like fall symbolism there, dying, right? The season of death. And usually in narrative, if you're using autumn, it's because something's going to die or something's going to go wrong. At least that's the way I've generally understood it, right? Winter is death, spring is rebirth, summer is
became a steady drone counterpointing her breaths. An athlete in her sanctuary, in perfect disharmony. And then, discord. The ground vanished beneath her. No warning, no stumble, just an abrupt absence of solid earth. 1 minute she pounded the path, the next she clawed at cascading soil. Her shout turned to a gurgle as her lungs were flattened by the fall. Pain lanced through her, a blinding symphony, punctuated by the final thud as she slammed into something unbearably hard.
All right, interesting details here. I mean, the word symphony comes back up, but it might have just been a repetition from the last render. But again, that red flag in me is like is going off with words like this. What else did I like here? I like the fact that she's clawing at the cascading soil. Remember, like I was describing, like what was in my head when I wrote my flash fiction, like her kind of hitting the walls. But I had to shorten the language, you know. But in my head, this is what she was doing, and Gemini was able to interpret that. Now, maybe it's grabbing historically, it's grabbing the context for my story. It's then taking its story structure and then expanding on that, but trying to go back to my context as also a source. I mean, it has to be doing some interpretation work on my source, right? But in any case, I feel like it got here. I'm kind of curious to see what it does.
Every gasp echoed painfully in the newly formed tomb. Her limbs wouldn't obey, her body a foreign, broken thing. Her frantic eyes adjusted, and the
instead of just being ambiguous with my commentary there, I like the form tomb. I like words that represent something metaphorically, right? Especially as a potentially foreshadow here.
Pit opened below, the earth widening into a cavern of inky, waiting darkness. Time slowed, then froze. The forest ceased its rhythmic exhale, holding its breath.
I mean, we have the forest. The forest ceased its rhythmic exhale. Say that word. So it has a little bit of that again. Her breathing, but the forest is also breathing. There's like life all around her, and then the life ends because she's getting swallowed whole by the earth. Like I like the.
Something was down there. Something sentient and waiting. A prickling dread.
Stop. See, this is something that ChatGPT almost never does. I don't believe it's ever done it. I've written it into my revisions because I like this sentence idea here. I like the idea of it. I like the pattern of this kind of writing style. It's something I use in my own writing, but I feel like I don't get that out of ChatGPT. I gotta force it, where, especially if it's in dialogue. You know, sometimes like a character speaks a certain way, and the character's pausing. There's a reason why the character's pausing, and then saying something else, and then maybe pausing again, and then saying something else. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a flow to dialogue that is supposed to present a vibe as you're reading it. As a reader, you're hearing the voice and those pauses. And I also like that when you're describing something, or when you just end a paragraph with like an M dash, right? Like where like everything, the idea ends. Why does the idea end? Because the next paragraph is going to be like it's an extreme disruption. You want to get to the reader because you want the reader to feel the disruption, not read it. You see what I'm saying? There's like things you do with the way you write that is also conveying part of the story. And I feel like ChatGPT is atrocious at this. And so when it sounds like I'm going off on some of these very simple things, but it's the only way I can communicate based on, again, 3 months and 100,000 words that I've saved, right? More than that in 3 months, right? And like, I'm just seeing patterns to the AI's output that if people use it like a crutch too heavily, people are going to see it's going to go flat. It's going to go flat because it will almost never write things that feel natural. Now I'm saying this because Gemini has now given me more than one, like more than two at this point. This might be the third one, right? It was the single word sentence. It was the pattern repetition of concepts and words like breathing and like the top, right? It was 4. The mirror patterns from the beginning and the end seem to be very strong. Like a natural language sounding, and then we got this. We got ellipses. we got some pausing while in natural writing. Man, I felt that it was another tangent.
Sent shivers down her spine. Her eyes struggled against the gloom, picking out movement, slow, deliberate. This was no startled woodland.
I mean, I still like the previous written style where it's like bang bang movement. Stop. Moving on. Now, that being said, look how it wrote this sentence, which is also, I use a lot of semicolons in my writing. So not a lot. I mean, I use them, I don't want to say liberally, like it's overused, but like the semicolon means something to me. Like it means something to the sentence structure to me, and I use it intentionally when I use it. That sounds like such a dumb way of expressing myself. Anyways, her eyes, maybe this will help me. Her eyes struggled against the gloom, picking out movement. Now, you could stop the sentence here, or you can continue it, which is the semicolon. There's a sentiment that happens here, but then it's the slow, deliberate, like also okay in the sense that it's varying its writing style. It's giving not a stop to a sentence, right? But it's like take a pause, right? But we're still going to continue the idea that preceded it, right? And we're going to say slow and deliberate. Like it's still unnerving. Like, does it compare to this right here? Eyes strained against the fading light. Movement, like there's something so impactful about that. And the other one for me was the beast description, right? The shape was wrong. That one's very impactful too. So let me see, is that a word? Anyways, let's go on. Ooh, look at that. I used the dash in here. What? Again, I rarely see this in ChatGPT. It'll use it, I guess, but and then Discord. Like it could have written that in boring ways, but that's what I love about prose versus like audiobooks, for example. It's this kind of stuff. Like I care about this kind of stuff. Maybe not everyone does, and they wouldn't have gone on as long as I did about it. But time slowed, then rose. Like there's a way you read that in your head, you know? Something sentient and right. Anyways, oh god, it happens again.
Creature. Each heavy footfall seemed to punch the air from her battered lungs. It was colossal. Its shape wrong.
I feel like pausing there. I didn't need to pause there and like disrupt you all, but I mean, because I can't roll back this audio over. But it's like, each heavy footfall seemed to punch the air from her battered lungs. I mean, the last generation did something like that to me that I talked about, where it's like, I don't know how those two ideas, they don't land for me. Like, I don't understand with the sound of the heavy footfall seemed to punch the air from her battered lungs. Like she was gasping for breath, like she was trying to hold her breath every step because she was afraid that something was coming with those steps that could hear her breathing. Like there might be a complex idea happening here that maybe this makes sense and this reads well, but to me, I feel like this correlation here is a little bit disruptive in not an awesome way, like some of these other ways where, right? I don't remember ChatGPT making me feel like this often. Where like in a sentence I go, what's that supposed to make me feel? The way that's written, like what's being said here that's beyond what's being said here, like that kind of thing. I'm not sure if ChatGPT's done that.
Muzzle stretched unnaturally, claws longer than knives. Coarse fur rippled across a too-high back, and that tail. Oh God, that tail, whipped back and forth with deadly accuracy.
I mean, not all of this was as awesome feeling as the first render. Why do I keep saying render for these things? Generation, right? Because this one felt like the more description was actually worse to me here, right? It was colossal. It's shaped wrong. Like this is okay. Is it better than the shape was wrong? Breaking a thought, right? Canine bulk shackled to unnatural elongated limbs, like something holding it back. Whereas this description to me was maybe, I don't know, maybe too much giveaway. It was colossal. It's shaped wrong. Still good, still short, but not as much impact. Muzzle stretched unnaturally. Claws longer than knives. This feels like a boring descriptor versus the last one, which maybe is like my imagination is what added to it. And then, of course, this feels like something that would be in a gaming book, and I wouldn't question it if it was in a description for a gaming bestiary. You know what I mean? But in fiction, I'm not sure. If I was like wanted to write something quick and it wasn't that vital or important, like it was part of a short story and we're just trying to get the scene moving, this might come out of something like this. Something like this might come out of me because it's not really important. But like in a short fiction like this, where like every kind of word and sentence counts for the feeling you take away, I feel like this maybe is too much. Coarse fur rippled across a too high back. I mean, a too high back is not that doesn't feel like a good descriptor for me too. I like that elongated, that unnatural elongated form. That was more horror based. I don't know. I mean, am I getting too picky? But then this part right here and that tail. Oh God, that tail. See, it's the pause. These things are important, especially in horror fiction, man. You've seen it. If you're a horror reader, you know that this is how you write horror fiction because you're trying to build up that tension. You're building up that nervousness in the reader. And then whipped back and forth with deadly accuracy. again, not a descriptor I would give. I like the last one, like deadly accuracy to what? Like, what's it trying to target? You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying with some of these words being like, could you leave them in and like get away with it? Sure. But if you want to be picky, and rewrite some pieces, like this would be the kind of thing where it's like, I might let it go, especially if I'm writing something with AI and I know it's AI and everyone who's reading this knows it's AI and just kind of excuse it because it's AI. Like, are we going to get to a world like that? Probably. And am I okay with writing like in bulk, like ideas, like get ideas out there as fast as possible and then leave things like this in? Yeah, probably. I'd probably do it because it matters on like how much I'm creating and what's the audience for that creation, right? Like, is it a world Bible? Is it just like a bestiary of like simple descriptors and getting too fluffy with the language for each of the monsters inside this bestiary would just get overwhelming and redundant in different ways. So maybe like this simplicity is the way to go, right? But I feel like this nah, I don't know. This one at least made me pause and wonder if it's something I would keep in or regenerate, right? Because now you kind of get in the way that I kind of review AI generated and like what makes you have to collaborate with it. Back to my original points at the beginning of this. Oh my God, I'm at 1 hour and a half. Let's keep going.
As those golden eyes blazed from the inky depths, an animalistic comprehension rose in Stacy. This wasn't a contest. It wasn't even a pursuit. This was inevitable. As the monstrous growl vibrated through the earth, it became a final, mocking countdown. And then, a blur of fur and teeth was all that remained in her fading vision. Her watch chirped a forgotten victory tune, an ironic epitaph to a battle lost before it even began. But somewhere deep within the cavern...
Okay, we're getting some death symbolism here without being explicit. So they're still keeping some of these words, right?
Under the settling dust and blood, a different countdown resonated.
ChatGPT would never have written. I know this because I have a fight scene where, there was a fight scene and it was violent. Wouldn't have been in the vocabulary for it to use, but something was fighting a human. And it was, when I meant like human was destroyed, I didn't mean human was evaporated or it's disintegrated or whatever ChatGPT interpreted that as. It's like, no, there still should have been some violence. Like, it was still a pretty violent scene. Blood will not get printed. Some of these flash fictions that I ran through this ChatGPT exercise, there were horror flash fictions. Like, that's what I write. That's what I enjoyed writing. Not all of them, but most of them. Like 80 to 90% of them were some dark themed ideas, and some of them were just rough. And I would actually get warnings from ChatGPT that I was breaking terms of service. Like, it would actually warn me. And sometimes it wouldn't render at all. I was like, what the hell's going on here? And so I'd have to put in like feedback. I was like, I don't even know what I'm being stopped for. Like, what am I breaking? What term? These are my stories. This isn't a copyright issue. This is like, what are we talking about right now? I couldn't figure it out. And then it happened enough where I saw the pattern and I was like, oh, these are dark. There's like dark stuff talking about death here, or like visceralness, or a macabre kind of. ChatGPT does not like that. It will not write these things out. Not the way you intend anyways. It'll rewrite the things, but you're going to lose whatever you might have wanted to convey. That might have been macabre or every time I say that word, it has to be that way. I don't know why. Anyways, okay, so on this render, just seeing settling dust and blood, like, that's making me want to switch, like, right now. Like, I will redo all of my work right now, like this weekend with Gemini, and I'm going to cancel my ChatGPT 4 account because just that alone, it sounds like a simple thing, folks, but when you want to do things at scale, like, I want to work faster. I want the imagination in my head to go somewhere faster. I don't want to spend an equal time questioning what I'm reading 10 times just to, move forward. I want to be able to, like, feel like, yes, I might get caught up in little things like the one I pointed out here, like with the deadly accuracy, the whipping back and forth, the deadly accuracy, like this one here with the footfalls seem to punch air from her battered lungs. Like, I can let those ones pass, but not being able to write a fight scene that ends with someone bleeding or like someone like feeling completely distraught, because ChatGPT will never let that person feel just distraught. How does ChatGPT write things? It's something like, so-and-so was terrified, but inspired. What are we talking about right now, ChatGPT? And I'm telling you, as soon as you see it, you can't unsee it. You can't. You need these characters to go through these like down points to come out, but there's never a down point because there's always something intriguing or awe-inspiring or hopeful, or there's always some other swing there where you're like, you just ruined the entire scene by adding the and positive. You've ruined the entire scene by these two words, and positive, which is usually an opposite of the thing that's negative, right? Look at this right here. There's no, this just is what it is. There's a finality to this. God damn, there's even a symbolic finality, an iconic epitaph to a battle lost before it even began. There is no hope for Stacy in this conclusion before it began, people. Oh man, there's no continuation here. The somewhere deep within the cavern, under the settling dust and blood, a different countdown resonated. Oh, maybe I'm going to get turned around here. Like you think she's dead here, but...
A heartbeat slower, less familiar, more primal. Stacy's time was at an end. Yet, there in the shadows, something stirred. Something that bore her memory of sunlight and a fierce instinct to push past its limits. Perhaps this wasn't a true ending, but a monstrous transformation. Time would tell. The forest floor now held a dark secret, one with burning eyes and an insatiable hunger. New additions.
Oh, did you catch that? That actually turned me around. So this is why I spent months. I stopped reading and I stopped doing anything really because I was just generating stuff with ChatGPT, because I was just generating stories and reading it and like having these moments that you just experienced live right now where like I literally talked to you about how I thought this was going to end. I didn't read, and then I got a whole other ending that I never anticipated, and the way that it turned it around, it turned my entire story around. Like it turned this into a werewolf story that potentially Stacy, did you catch that? Yet there in the shadows, something stirred. Like I don't know what that means. Like there's something else, like a survivor, or that she thinks she's gonna die, but she hears something else breathing down there. That's not the monster that just took her. So, but then something that bore her memory of sunlight and a fierce instinct to push past its limits. So that she's gonna come out of this alive somehow, but maybe changed. Perhaps this wasn't a true ending. Oh, nice little swing-a-rooney there. But a monstrous transformation. Is she going to turn into one of these beasts, right? Time would tell. Leaving it ambiguous, the forest floor now held a dark secret. One with burning eyes and an insatiable hunger. This turned into a werewolf plot. I didn't expect it to turn that she died, but to be reborn, you know? So, I mean, still intriguing, still interesting. Not the story I intended or wrote, or could really see being the expansion of my vision, but intriguing nonetheless. Let's see the points that it gives here.
Internal monologue. More glimpses into Stacy's psyche, emphasizing her runner's mentality and thrill-seeking nature. Shifting atmosphere, matching the forest's changing mood to mirror Stacy's journey into danger. Focus on physicality, the pain of the fall, the growing horror as the creature is realized. Transformation hint. A lingering suggestion that Stacy's story may not have completely ended.
Okay.
Let me know if you'd like another try, maybe focusing on a different direction for expansion.
I mean, that's the thing. That's why there's never a blank page here, and if you don't like what one of these AIs generates for you, just regenerate it. There's nothing stopping you from generating this stuff 100 times. Do you understand? It's just like, how long do you want to read the same story? I've spent 10 hours reading one scene, 1,000 words. And there was one day I remember very distinctly, I needed the scene to go a very specific way, and I could not get ChatGPT to put me in that direction. And that was me learning its limits, because at that time when I was fighting it that way, it's because I didn't know that it was trying to avoid violence and or whatever the hell I was writing. But it needed to be 1,000 words that were vital to the turning point of the character. Like it was a very important turning point to the scene of this character, and I couldn't get it to do it right. And I was going paragraph by paragraph at one point, where just write what I'm asking you to write. And then I finally keyed into it, and it was a fight. There was a fight part of that scene, which would be like I gave it a 1-page synopsis at one point, where I choreographed the entire fight, because I write comic books and I produce comic books, and so I have I can see the things in my head. I can see the fight that's going on in my head, and I can generally put that into a comic book script format that an artist is generally, every artist I've worked with, they've rendered the scene more or less the way I see it, but I'm not overwriting the scene in the comic script. I feel like when I break down the pages for an artist, like I'm thinking about the pacing as if I give them 5 panels. Like my head is already seeing those 5 panels a certain way, and I'm going to describe just the key points that I need in that panel. And I hope to God that it comes out the other end in the same vision, or like our vision is more or less aligned. And so when I get the art back, it's generally like, this is the scene. Like, are the camera angles exactly what I envisioned? No, because there's months apart of like when I write a script and when I get the art back, right? Sometimes years apart. But it's like, but when I see the art and I put the text on top of the panels in the comic page, it flows the way I intended. The scene plays out the way I intended, and that's kind of the same way that I want my prose to come across, right? And there's like choreography matters because I know what the next scene is going to be, and I know that if the person takes an injury to one part of their body, it needs to matter because it matters to the next scene, and ChatGPT might not have that foreshadowing, or even if they do in the notes, they don't work towards that. They don't write towards that. So what the hell was my point here? I don't know. I knew it was something to do with the collapsing of the choreography. It turned one page into a paragraph, which I think the summary of that little story there. And I just, I forget the actual point where I started, but I know when I'm editing this back, I'm going to realize I forgot to say something. That's okay. We're recording this as raw as possible, and I'm almost hitting the 1 hour and 45 minute mark. Hopefully this has been shortened for all of you in a reasonable manner. The point was to go in a different direction. And I was going paragraph by paragraph because I needed it to describe the thing I'm asking you to describe because it's going to be important. So that's the point of taking a different direction. What I like here is that in theory, I could just go into these show drafts and it's going to have 3 different renders of this story, which is going to make my life so much easier. Because here's how I would use ChatGPT. I would render these things, and if there was 3 paragraphs where I'm like, no, something's a little off here. Can you? And then I would cut and paste those 3 paragraphs back into ChatGPT, and I would say rewrite this with these details in mind, and then I would get rewrites. And what then I would do is not use render again. Not use the generation of those 3 paragraphs, take those 3 paragraphs back into my store. I was using Google Docs at the time. It could be Scrivener, it could be whatever. But then I would put the text back into my master document, and I'd go paragraph by paragraph, and I'd take sentences that work the best. And then I would compile something that worked the best, and then I would rewrite and stitch that stuff together into my revision. So that's the point of skipping the blank page, is that you can even go into things like this and go, which part did I like better? Did I like this paragraph better? Hell, maybe I go all the way up to this one again, right? And I use the one that was shorter because maybe it just sounds better. Or maybe the part in the middle sounded better and I use the 2 paragraphs. Why is the highlight now work? Or I use the 2 paragraphs in here because they were better instead of the 1 paragraph here that got overloaded or what. You know what I'm saying? There's ways to do this. Or you go into draft too. Is it going to... Wait, is this generating on the fly? I'm not programmed to assist with that. What are you talking about right now? Oh my gosh, I don't know. Oh, I'm designed solely to process and generate text, so I'm unable to assist you with that? What are we talking about? What did I ask for that was different than, you were able to do it the first time. Okay, so I don't have to look at the drafts after all. But I'm certain that if this worked the right way, I'd have 3 different versions of this. Or you can just tell it to generate another version of this, and it will. Or you say, I liked everything but the last paragraph. Can you make it not insinuate that she's alive? I feel like testing that right now. This is going long enough, but just an experiment. I would go, can you rewrite the last paragraph, but remove the transformation and ambiguity, and make it so that it's clear that she's dead. But use a punchy line at the end that's more reminiscent of my original prose. If I were to keep this exercise going, I might, to see to evaluate the AI, not to get a finished story out of this, because none of this, I'm not keeping any of this, but it's the idea of I take this last paragraph and say, yeah, I like the idea where you're going for and how you ended it with that weird little twist there, that there could be a transformation hint in there. Can you expand on the last paragraph to do a second part to this and let me know what happens? Or maybe break down, take this as an act 1 of a short story, and how does this play out? What's the act 2 for this? What's the act 3 for this? Or maybe I go, I like everything about the last generation, but can you take the last paragraph and not make it about the transformation and make it more explicit about her dying, and maybe more dark, and just to see if it will do that. Will it be explicit about the characters being able to die, or is it going to have the ChatGPT limitations where you can't get macabre, you can't get dark with these things. It just won't generate those kinds of things, which would be nice to know, because that's probably the experiment I'm going to be going on this weekend to keep pushing it. But I'm creeping towards the 2-hour mark, and I thought this was going to be a 20-minute video. Because it was just going to be this one little test, but I'm experiencing Gemini for the first time, and I guess this is a reaction video to that, because why not? Because why not? I guess I could do whatever the hell I want, but I would love to do more of these videos. If people are interested, I'd go down these like blind generation journeys and just do reactions along the way, do breakdowns like that, because I've been doing methodology, story breakdown methodology, reactions and analysis videos for manga and for anime and for shows on Netflix and games even, across channels in the past. And I mean, this is obviously using a methodology based on patterns, from millions of sources, right? Billions. And so it might be interesting for me to kind of go through stuff, especially if like this flash fiction that it's originally my content anyways. And I get to break it down based on the context of my content and what my intent was, and then what the outputs are, and how far can we push this? How far can we go? And I could do some of these videos along the way. Like, can I turn one of these flash fictions into a short story? And like right now we got 500 words here, but I'm not, I would like to see if I could turn one of these into a legitimate, like a short story of like 2,000 words, right? Or can it get to 5,000 words? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how far this goes, but I'm willing to give it a shot and see. I won't go through the whole process here, but I'm going to go, can you write a version that is double the length? See like what it's able to do here, and do a character count, because I want to see more than anything what the character count limit is if I were to push this thing. Especially because I have other projects that I'm working on that are kind of like this. There's one I'm working on. It feels really cool to me. There's like a vibe to them. It's kind of like journal entries that tell the story of this town that exists in like a really weird place. And but it's written in a way that it's not explicit about. It's hard to explain right now, and maybe I'll do another episode on that. I'll do a video on breaking that down. I'd love to do something like that together with the audience, because that's like modularized, like story fiction, because I'm trying to, again, maximize how I can collaborate with AI by doing projects like that, which cohesively those journals tell some other story, and I got the breakdown of what that is. But each event is kind of its own little thing, and it's kind of like a window into a feeling that's narrative, but it's hard to explain. But I like to get my confidence up before I do a project like that, especially if I'm sharing it with an audience. So real quick, without going deep into the reading of this, this doesn't feel like more than 1,000 words. I will be lucky if this is 1,000 words. This is 556 words. So I'm getting the same output from Gemini as I get from ChatGPT when I ask it to expand on things. I can push ChatGPT to expand to 720 words or so, 750 words. I could eventually get it to that much, but something to do with its context and how much it can store, or tokens, I think is what they call them. It'll run out of tokens, and then it just can't go any further. So it kind of works within its limits. So what you need to do with a situation like this is I would take, like, especially because like I know how to break down patterns like on the fly because I've been doing it for so long. I would go like, where's pattern phase 1 and phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, and then I would take that and go expand on phase 1, expand on phase 2, expand on, you know what I'm saying? So then I would then stitch those 4 pieces together, and then I would get my 1,500, 2,000 words. That's the approach I'm taking. Now, that being said, when you do that with ChatGPT, the last paragraph is usually completely expendable because it's trying to summarize this. It's trying to do a conclusive paragraph, as I've talked about. So you just wipe that one out completely, you will lose nothing. And then it'll bridge into the next part, and sometimes you got to clean up the intro of that part so that they stitch together, and you just move forward. All right, so I stopped recording. I ended the video, but I'm coming back real quick because there's a couple things I need to point out. That's crazy. ChatGPT will never have done this italicized prose. So did you push hard enough? Like you're asking yourself. So internal dialogue, it usually makes an external document and doesn't italicize. Maybe it can't. Look, I don't understand. I've never seen it done. Also, it never does this. I have to inject this because I like paragraphs that break things down to this. One sentence in one paragraph. Ask people to like focus on what I just said and move on. That's usually something that appears in a lot of horror fiction as well. I like it in my writing. I like to break things down. I like to give people a breather and really focused on the thing I want you to take away. Then the earth gave way. Like something vital and important happened that is disrupting the entire flow of the scene that came before it. That's like, I love this. In prose, I don't get this out of ChatGPT. I generally have to rewrite that in. So that's another thing that stood out to me, of course, which I really enjoyed. There's a couple other parts here. Of course, there's ellipses everywhere, which is great. There's even hyphens. Now, maybe it's overuse. I'm not sure. But in any case, this is good. The overgrown one to her competitive spirit, which is great. There's like a double hyphen, like an interrupter here. In any case, a grin split her face. Why did predictability seem like the worst defeat? So an interrupter, and she swerved right. So, and a change of action. This a proper use of like an interrupter. So there you go. So I don't see this often in ChatGPT. I already talked about this one. There's a lot of good moments in here. I didn't want to spend more time on this video talking about these things. But anyways, I like I like a lot about this. Oh, there's one about the darkness here, which I like the idea of it. Why did this one right here? If she stuck to the known path, she might barely beat the darkness. And I like that might have been insinuating for the whole transformation angle that they're taking this. And then, of course, I like the ending here to bring that all back home. This perhaps wasn't a true ending. Not yet. The woods cradle their newly born creature of darkness, their dark secret. something that bore not only monstrousness, but a sliver of a burning spirit that craved struggle sunlight and a clock to shatter. I'm not sure I like shatter. I shatter time, maybe because you become undying so that time no longer matters. Like there might be a symbolic way that this all plays out and can still matter, I guess. But it's still strange and mysterious because like it's a werewolf isn't really associated to sunlight, but this one is, so there's like this ended on a whole other different kind of ambiguity that maybe has to do with this whole transformation creature thing. Who knows? But anyways, I just wanted to call out some of these other fiction-based, prose-based things that I do think that this is better than ChatGPT in that regard. It gives some more variety to the prose. But yeah, there's a lot to do with AI as a collaborator, especially if you just want to spend it with, like for me, it's like I don't watch things. I would like to get back into reading, but this has become my reading exercise for, almost daily at this point. It's just generating things, reading it, experimenting, reading it, right? Stitching World Bibles together for ideas that I have and or have had for 20 years. And and that's basically been my entertainment rabbit hole for the last couple of months. I do think it's a lot of fun. I don't think the writing's going to be like mind-blowing, but it's still entertaining, especially if you're building a world on the fly and you get to experience that world through these generations and kind of escaping into them, and then you can explore them further by asking it to expand on things in the world. I think there's a lot of places that this can go. It's just from an entertainment perspective. If you print none of this, if you show it to nobody, I still feel like there's a lot of entertainment value that comes out of using these AIs to kind of just kill a couple hours if you don't want to watch anything. You just do this instead. That's how I've kind of approached it. This has been a lot of fun. I enjoyed it because I do think that this is a lot of fun to talk through and work my ideas out and share it with other people instead of just doing this on my own and then sharing it inside a Scrivener document and then no one sees it ever. So we'll see where this goes. This is an experiment channel anyways. Right now I'm just throwing things at it and seeing what people jive with and just go from there. Cool? Whew. I'm actually going to lose my voice. I need to get a drink now. Don't forget to explore, engage, and inspire. Ready. Peace.